Welcome to Imperfect Mommying. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Mommying, and we have a very special guest today, Irene McKenna. Welcome to Imperfect Mommying.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So I'll have you introduce yourself, and I think it's super cool that you and I are really aligned in what we do and who we help.
We are. The conversation we had when we connected, it felt like we could just go on talking forever. So I'm super excited to get to share all of that with your community. So yes, I am Irene McKenna. I am a parenting and empowerment coach, relationship coach. Basically, I support moms to thrive, or as I like to say, find their bliss. And that is to create this foundation through which they operate from, where it means finding their voice. It means setting boundaries. It means recognizing their needs and wants and desires as valid. And when we do that, we engage with our relationships completely differently. When we know to look within for the answers, we are naturally parenting in a much more conscious place, which means I'm not trying to stuff down my impatience and my triggers, but I'm engaged with my triggers so that I can understand them and then engage with my children completely differently. And that's what really fosters the cooperation that we so want. So that's what I do. I work with moms to create that. I have a course, Finding Your Bliss, but in my own life, it was, probably 8 years ago now when my kids are now 8.5 and 10, and they're 15 months apart. And when it was probably like 2 or 3. I mean, the first few years were just chaos, for lack of a better word. I mean, there's probably better words, but we don't need to say them. But nobody was happy. My mantra at the time was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And so what do you think everything felt like? I can't do this. My relationship with my husband suffered, with my kids. I remember one day in particular, I'm in my room with the door locked, sobbing, like, I don't know how to do this. And my kids are on the outside of the door calling for me. And I was just like, something has got to change. This can't be what it's all about. I remember wanting to be a fly on another mom's wall just to be like, is this it? Like, is this what it really is? And for so many of us, that's what we believe. It's like something we have to survive, something we have to get through, when in fact, we can shift our foundation, we shift our come from. And I will talk much more about it, my 4 pillars of self-awareness and how we operate as what I say our quantum self. And that's really the best version of ourselves. Not to say, there's kind of a catchphrase right now, be the best version of you, but it's really about recognizing our uniqueness, our unique needs, and our unique family with our unique personalities. And what do I need to put in place to find my happiness from the inside out?
That's so incredible. And I think that we could talk about every single thing that you just mentioned for 4 hours. Probably. We won't, but we could. And I remember at the height of my depression and exhaustion and learning to be a single mom, which is something I never wanted to do. I remember thinking, I don't want to be a mom anymore. And I even engaged in a conversation with a friend of mine, and where I told her that, and she said, I have a friend that'll take your son off your hands. Legitimately. And I was like, oh, and like that put my money where my mouth was. And it was like, it made me realize that what I was really feeling is that I needed a break.
Because we've been so trained to look outside of ourselves. Well, to get a break or to feel supported or to feel happy again, I need to not be a mom anymore. Like that's what I see, because we've been conditioned to believe that if my kids would just listen, if my partner would just support me in this way, if this would happen, if that would happen, if I had this job, then I would be happy. Then I would feel not so overwhelmed. Then I would have whatever it is I want. And we may find, I have some clients that come to me that are in the process of considering if they want to separate. And I tell them, I cannot tell you the outcome. I cannot tell you if you're going to stay together or not. What I can tell you is that if we engage in this and you go through this healing, you will be making those choices from an empowered place,
right?
Not a disempowered place, resentful place, angry place. You will be able to have your voice and engage in the conversations over what you need. And if you find out that your partner cannot give it to you in a way that you need it, then you can engage in that conversation.
Right.
And I've had some that their relationships are healed and amazing and they feel great, and others who make the decision to separate. But it's how we operate in those instances. So thank you for sharing that vulnerable moment that you had in your parenting, because I also think it's something that we don't create the space to even talk about.
Oh yeah. I'm a horrible mom for ever having that thought. Like that's the worst thing that you could think as a mom. And it's not something that I openly shared with a lot of people. And I remember telling my mom that, and she goes, oh, there's no way in hell we would have let anybody else take Xander. Like we would have taken him for you, but there's no way some random person, which is not the point. But we our society has this addiction to addition, but also what you are just saying is that we have an addiction to subtraction, where if I get rid of this in my life, if I stop being a mom, that'll fix my problem. If I stop being in this relationship, that'll fix my problem. And you're right. It's more like 99% of the time, it's an internal solution. I would even go as far as saying 99.9% of the time that there's an internal solution to the problem. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, where, we have these engagements and interactions with other moms online where we feel like they're shaming us. And if there's no button to push, they can't push the button.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so
they're only trying to feel better about themselves by standing in their righteousness. And if I project my fears onto you, then I don't have to look at myself. Like all judgment is personal. I mean, it's your internal work being projected outward. And you're, like you said, if you don't have that button to push, like I use the thing all the time. If somebody says to me like, oh, you're so short. And I'm like, okay, I'm 5'8". That doesn't really make sense. Like no button to be pushed. But if you make a comment on my weight, which is an ongoing struggle, I'm going to likely feel that pressure and that shame because there's a button to push.
Right. Like if I told you that you had the ugliest purple hair I've ever seen, your hair is brown. Like you're going to think that I'm crazy because, right. And the thing that's really on my heart today, just because it happened as of the point where we're recording this, it happened 2 days ago. My son was in the park with a friend of his, and he was telling his friend, I need space from you. In those words, like he said, I need a break from you. And his friend said, no, you can't have a break from me because my mom said we have to stick together. So really neither child was in the wrong, but neither one was being flexible. And it ended up in a fight where my son hit his friend first. And I got all the information piece by piece. I mean, first it was the friend hit him and he ran away because he was trying to get away from the friend. And it's like, oh, what's going on? And so I got pieces of the story at a time, but each piece that I got never made me feel like my son was at fault. And I also don't think, that my son can't be at fault. I'm not one of the, like, it's everyone else's fault. Sure. My favorite concept is it's not my fault, but it's my responsibility. It's not his fault that his friend wouldn't give him the space, but it's his responsibility that he hit his friend. Right. And
it's also recognizing that in that moment, he used every strategy he knew how until he got to the point where he still needed that space. He wasn't being heard. And that's where we educate. Okay, I hear you. And what else could you have done without hitting? So yes, it's taking responsibility in that essence to learn a new strategy. But as a parent, it's recognizing that he tried everything he could think of. And now I need to teach towards a future moment when this comes up. But so often we're focused on punishing the past behavior, which is done. It's done. We can't change it. And all we do when we focus on punishing it is we close off that connection and communication that creates the opportunity to teach to a future behavior.
Right. And that's where I was going with it too, is that, my boyfriend heard the story because I was telling him the story in sequential order that I knew it. Right.
Right.
That my boyfriend thought that he should have a punishment because he hit his friend. And I went I knew, like, I went to defense, like he was trying to get his needs met and all of that. And it's like, well, yeah, the guy who robs a liquor store is trying to get his needs met, but that guy still gets punished if he gets caught, And I'm like, right. And that guy's an adult and this is a child. This is a 9-year-old who's
without the prefrontal cortex where he has impulse control and rational thinking and logic and all of those things. And yes, it's also teaching him at this age that there are other ways to meet that need or express a feeling so that when he's that adult and for whatever reason, the choice is like, okay, I need money. Okay. The only solution I see is to rob this liquor store. He also knows, okay, there's other solutions than this, but it means we're teaching at this young age that we need to broaden our perspective to this one thing and recognize, okay, is there other options available to me?
Right. Yeah. And I went to the online community because I felt very unsettled about this idea of punishing him for trying to get his needs met. I really felt like it wasn't right to punish. And I just wanted some other input. First, I asked for input on should he be punished? And then I asked for input on what tools can I help teach him? Because he tried asking for his needs to be met. He tried seeking help from another adult. He went to the lifeguard. I didn't know that again, that was another piece that I heard later. He tried, someone shared these 5-finger, 5 fingers that you could do, like count to 5 or take 3 deep breaths and count to 10 and ask for help and communicate your needs. And he did 3 out of the 5. And the 5th one is probably the only one he didn't know or try, right? The breathing thing. And so I would say if there were 10, there was probably 7 out of 10 comments agreed that he shouldn't be punished. And there were moms that were, 100% it's not okay to hit in any situation. And I don't agree with that as a 9-year-old, I like.
Now that's not to say he shouldn't be encouraged to repair the relationship with his friend. There's a very different thing between punishing the past behavior that already happened and him, when he's in a calm state, recognizing that that was not a good choice, that his friend, not only physically could be hurt, but emotionally, mentally, and maybe he writes a letter. Maybe he, has you foster a conversation with his friend. Like, I'm not saying we don't address the hit. I'm not saying that we don't work to repair the relationship and have him take responsibility. Like you said, have him take responsibility for it. But what exactly does punishing accomplish except to say, I have more power than you to make you more unhappy and to take something away from you? And basically all of that engages in any human, but in a child is anger towards the parent, so that next time he's not thinking about, oh, mom said I shouldn't do this because I know mom's got my back in all situations. He's thinking, how do I not get caught?
Right.
How do I do this and not get caught and not get in trouble? Because when we are punishment focused, we are past behavior focused. We are focused. And what is really that punishment doing? It's making us feel better as a parent. It's making us feel like I'm doing something, right? Because that's not an okay thing. We all know that hitting's not okay. It's not teaching my child. It's making me feel better that I'm doing something. But when we are operating from this place of consciousness, when we can be aware of the stories, I mean, yes, if as a child, we were punished for those things, we have a rule book in our head that tells us that's what I'm supposed to do. And until we learn to question that, we are going to operate in that way. We are going to believe that punishment is the way to go because my parents didn't listen to my story. My needs were not met. My story was not heard. It was all about the behavior. But behavior is always a downstream effect. And you have beautiful awareness of this, but behavior is always a downstream effect from the upstream, like you said, feeling or need, then doing the best that they are capable of. So when I can engage from that perspective, it means that I'm also aware of why I feel the need to punish. Why is punishment important to me in this moment?
Yeah. And it's really like, this is a new situation for both me and him. He's never had somebody say, no, you can't have space. Right. So like he used every tool and resource that he was given, that he knew of.
Right. It's the same thing as if your child's learning a new math problem and he gets it wrong because he uses every strategy he knows to solve it and he still gets it wrong, and you punish him for that.
Right. Yeah. And when you put
because he hasn't been taught it yet.
Right. That sounds really, really silly to do that. Right. And so I agree that it's not okay to hit in any situation. And I'm not going to punish him for hitting because that wasn't step one.
Because when he's in his calm place, he knows that hitting's wrong. You're not teaching him anything by punishing him. He knows it's wrong. He just didn't know what else to do because his fight or flight was activated and he was trying to get away and he was speaking to the need for space. And his friend was doing what he was supposed to do because his mom said, okay, you stick together if you're there, don't separate because I need to know you're together. And so he was trying to avoid doing the wrong thing. Yeah, exactly. By sticking with them. So then again, it becomes, okay, if this happens again, if you speak to that and your friend says, no, I can't give you space, what other solutions? And it's brainstorming all of these other ideas that might be available. Like, can we just sit on separate chairs for 5 minutes and not talk? So we're still together, but we're having kind of space. Like, it's teaching what's available. But like you said, if I'm punishing him for something he didn't know how to do, what is the message I'm sending? And who am I doing that for?
What you're doing is you're creating this fixed mindset. So the thing that they're teaching in school now, which I'm in love with, is the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. Right. And you're solidifying the fixed mindset that I get punished when I do something wrong. And so guess what? I'm not going to try new things because what if the new thing is wrong? Air quotes,
or I don't speak up for my needs because I spoke up for my needs
and I got punished.
I wasn't listened to and then I got punished. So now I'm not going to ask for what I need. And that's going to lead to even bigger behaviors when he needs, maybe he's running away from his friend or hiding. And then it brings a whole plethora of other things up.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about, you told your story that you were overwhelmed. You had a 2 and a 3-year-old and it was affecting every area of your life. What was the first place that you started to get to where you're at?
Yeah. So the first was really carving out time for me, starting to eat a little better, starting to exercise, even like 20 or 30 minutes a day. And what I noticed was I'm like, oh my gosh, I have more patience when I do this. Like I wasn't making the correlations yet. I'm like, oh, I have more patience. And so I started there. And then I had somebody introduce me to like the whole concept of personal development. Right. And they're like, well, just read this book. And I remember what it was, but I read it. I'm like, oh my God. Like I was hooked to like this idea that you can expand yourself. And so it led me first to health coaching. So I became a certified health coach. And as I'm more and more taking care of myself, there was still this disconnect in my parenting and relationships. Mm. And so I was in conversation with another coach. She said, I'm a parenting coach. And I was like, say what? That's a thing? And I found I found a program within a couple of weeks. I had enrolled, and that was my first introduction to conscious parenting, which for me is having a deep understanding of myself first, but also understanding brain development and brain science and nervous system development and emotional intelligence. So it's understanding kids in a way that I'm no longer expecting them to act like little adults, but recognizing where they're at. But it was really about healing myself. And so that was the start of it. But then what happened is I kind of dove into this space of like, I've ruined my children. They're now 4 and 5. I haven't parented like this. I've ruined them. There's a lot of like guilt and shame around that. So that was diving deep back into myself. And as I did, it evolved into relationship coaching, because it was, as I'm, working on myself and my parenting, my husband wasn't doing the work, so to speak. So there was a lot of, potential conflict there. And it was learning how to engage with him in a way that I was not responsible for his emotional needs, or I was not responsible for the way that he parented, but I could open him up to new possibility. But that came from the inside out again. So it has just been this evolution of always working on me, and then working on areas where it's like, okay, working on my health. And then it was working on parenting. But parenting truly to me is who we are as the parent. Children are acting as the best they can. If we stay out of their way, and we are modeling the things, the values that we want to instill in them, like so much of it takes care of itself. Yeah. But we've been drilled in traditional parenting that we need to be, judge and jury. We need to have ultimate control. And kids absolutely need structure. They need boundaries. Conscious parenting is not permissive parenting by any means. So there's the power over model where it's like, I'm powering over, I need to control. And then there's the power under model where I'm not providing structure or boundaries. But empowered parenting is that beautiful space in the middle. And so that was diving into who I was as a parent. And then it was diving into who I was as a partner. And it's always been about understanding me deeper and in different ways, and developing different habits. And what that led me to is reading as many, I'm probably in the middle of about 12 different books right now, because I'm always like, what do I want today? And I'll pick up a book, but it's reading just tons of books and learning. And then it was, working with clients, and it really was about them finding their voice and finding their happiness from within. And then things just kind of took care of themselves. I would give them tools to engage with their parenting and how to set boundaries. And we would do the structure and the tools, but it was really about them. And the biggest thing I've realized is that I'm not special in that I've been able to do this. I've just read a ton of books, invested in a ton of coaching and programs, and gotten to this point. And so I wanted to present it in a way where it was your journey. And so I created my membership and my course, Finding Your Bliss, because it's not about like dangling this carrot, like I know how to do this, right? It's like, no, I want whoever wants to do this work to have access to it. And so that's why I, take these opportunities to be guests on amazing podcasts such as yours, to be able to share as much as I can. And that's why I'm so grateful to hostesses like yourself who are out there having these conversations and sharing these vulnerable moments, and taking motherhood from the memo that we're supposed to be selfless, and we're supposed to be, we're supposed to hide and not have a voice and do everything till the point we're scraping our cup and all this. But it's also not about just complaining about that or speaking to that memo, but how do we change that conversation? How do we create a different experience for motherhood?
And the thing that I love that you said is that it's a journey, it's a process. It's not, I snap my fingers and all of a sudden I'm healed and everything's perfect and my life is amazing. It's literally an evolution of yourself. And evolution, like if you believe in evolution, where we came from monkeys and whatnot, that took millions of years. And I'm not saying that I believe in it or don't believe in it. I'm just saying that, you know, it took millions of years. This isn't going to take millions of years, but my coach says one day you wake up and you decide to change your life, and then you're going to spend the rest of your life changing your life.
Yes.
And
I like to say there's these, go ahead.
To me, that's encouraging that it's not, there's no like, line. I mean, there's a line in the sand where I'm done with this BS and I'm going to continue dealing with it at different levels.
It's like we peel off the layers, and just because we're dealing with the same thing again, we're a different person dealing with it. So it's going to have different layers. But what I was going to say is I see these 4 stages of change, of transformation. And first there's the desire, right? I have to want to change. I have to be so sick of what is to want to change. And to be honest with you, we could stay there forever. Like you can stay wanting it and never do anything about it. But then it takes going into knowledge. So I add more knowledge. I take a program, I read a book, I add more knowledge. But then, like you said, the evolution or the lifetime spent is in the next phase, which is implementation. I have to actually do the things that I'm learning. I have to continue to peel off the layers and continue to grow. But so often what happens is we dip our toe into implementation, never goes like the book says it will, or the course says it will. So then we think I must not know enough. So I go back to knowledge and I have to learn more. And then we wonder, why is nothing changing? Yeah. But we're not laying down the wires in our brain to create that change so that we get to trust an embodiment of this new version of ourselves. We say, I'm going to try a little. Oh, it's not going well. I'm going to go back to knowledge. And we keep going kind of back and forth. But within implementation, we have to, as I say, we have to be willing in the beginning to quote unquote, get it wrong a lot more than we get it right. And that's through reflection. And then we build awareness, and then we get to the embodiment. So it's recognizing, like you said, that it's this process, this ongoing, we often see the outcome of who we want to be. And we are so stuck on that outcome that we constantly fall into overwhelm, because to the brain is, okay, I see what you want. I have no idea how to get there. So I'm just overwhelmed. I'm throwing up my hands. I'm keeping you stuck because we may not be happy, but stuck feels safe right now. So we have to be willing to just be messy and let go of the outcome that we think we want, and recognize that every moment is a choice to move towards that outcome or away from that outcome. We don't get to choose the outcome. We get to choose the next best step that takes us in that direction. And then we reevaluate the outcome. Oh, we take the next best step. We take the next best step. And if I keep taking those steps, I'm going to come to the outcome that I meant to have. It may look different than I thought. But we get so tied into how I want to show up as a parent, or how I want to, be in my life, that I'm not able to do the things that take me in that direction because it feels like too big of a space to the brain. Yeah. So I just stay stuck.
And I love that you broke down the stages, because you're right. I believe that people get stuck in between the knowledge and implementation, and knowledge without implementation is still ignorance. And then the other thing that came to my mind that has gone away now. Did come to my mind.
Happens to me all the time.
It came to my mind twice. And then it went away twice.
Maybe it'll come back again.
Yeah. It was something about that process and the knowledge and that our brain, it did come back. What people misunderstand about our brains is that we think that our brain is wired to get what we want and to make us happy. And our brain is wired to keep us safe and to keep you alive, to keep you physically and emotionally safe. And growth does not fall into either of those categories.
Because
growth
safe is I've survived this before.
Right.
So safe is, okay, yes, this didn't feel good, but I'm familiar with that. And to the brain, as you know, like familiar is a wide open plethora of things. Like, oh, this is a little bit familiar. So this is how I am here. And I survived that. And it's not wired for change. And so in change, we have our comfort zone, which is I'm alive, I'm safe, I'm here. And then we have our zone of trust. And it's important that we're operating in our zone of trust, which means I'm making steps in the direction I want to go. But beyond our zone of trust is the BS zone. And that's where we're like, I'm going to lose 50 pounds in 3 months, right? I have this big audacious thing. I have no idea how I'm going to get there. It feels really, we're kind of just throwing spaghetti at the wall. Like, it's like I'm stating a goal, but I don't believe it's going to happen. That's the BS zone. But can I commit to 5 pounds this month? Okay, that may be in my zone of trust, that I can do the things to move towards that goal. And so it is this evolution, and that's such a beautiful word to describe the personal development journey, because it's evolving from the version you are today. Like I say, it's upgrading your software. Same as, my phone tells me every other week it needs an update. We never think that, oh, my brain is like the biggest computer there is and it needs an update. Because as Byron Katie says, we're either believing our thoughts or we're questioning them. We've never been taught to question them. So we tend to just believe them. We just believe the world is as we see it, not as is what's possible, or not as is what's available. Yeah. But what I already know.
And, I've been in this personal development world pretty solidly, I would say, for at least the last 5 years, but I was introduced into it about 10 years ago, but like solidly and obsessively since 2017. And that's 5 years, right? Or 4 years. But my old pattern in a romantic relationship is don't do anything that disagrees with my significant other, because that'll make them angry enough that they'll want to leave me, or that they won't think I'm good enough to stay with. And so that was triggered inside my boyfriend wanting me to punish my son over this incident. And so my initial reaction was, okay, we'll punish him. We'll take away, either early bedtime or no water park for a week. And of course, my son objected to this. And I immediately had this feeling in the pit of my stomach. This is not right. I don't agree with this decision. And it took about 10 minutes. I was discussing, trying to kind of argue my boyfriend's side to my son and discussing it. And I said, you know what? I'm not punishing you. I don't agree with that. There's not a consequence for this, but you and I need to come up with new strategies and new tools and all of that. And we fostered the conversation between the two boys where they apologized to one another. And, I don't think that his mom and I could have handled it any better. I think we did a great job.
What a beautiful example of personal development. Right. You had awareness of, okay, I'm being triggered. Ooh, and this is probably why. And you were willing to have that discussion with your son. Like, I made a mistake. Right? So there's owning that I'm not perfect. I'm going to get it wrong sometimes. What a beautiful lesson. And you also fostered an empowered conversation where they got to take responsibility for both of their parts and come back together. Yeah. I mean, so much of that, and that none of that would have been possible if all we do is punish.
Right. And we know, his mom and I know that they fight like brothers and they love each other like brothers. Like they just have a really close relationship. And that I think is beautiful. And sometimes we need a break from our friend. Sometimes we need a break from our brother. And so they've spent a couple of days apart. And yesterday, my son's like, I'm not punished, right? Like, I can go to the water park on Thursday with Isaiah. And it's like, yeah, of course. Like, it's, and he goes, but can you come? I was like, I'm coming, don't worry. Yes. So
it's been enough, because my boys I have 2 boys, so they do fight like brothers and they're with each other, all of the time. And as I've done this work more and more, I'm beginning to witness where they're using new strategies and they are not resorting, but do they get to the point where they hit each other or attack each other? And then rather than again punish, I'm like, okay, what's going on? Oh, he's hungry. He's tired. He's feeling like he's not, he's worried that his brother's going to break his toy. And so he doesn't have a new strategy. And again, we're working. So I say, I'm like Switzerland. I stand between them. I'm like, I'm here for safety. I'm just here for safety. So I'm not like as I like to say, a plot developer of their relationship. But I'm a plot thickener. Like, I'll ask the questions, I'll foster the conversation, I will name the feelings, and I will create safety. And so he came up with a new strategy was, Mom, can you be there? So when my back's against the wall and I'm not being heard by anyone, I know you've got my back. And you taught him that in this experience.
Right.
You solidified that for him, that you've got his back because of what just happened. And so he feels safe coming to you. Mom, I really made a mistake. So now it's 9, I hit Isaiah. Now at 16, Mom, I tried drugs, or Mom, I tried alcohol. And he knows, like, I can make these mistakes and I can come to you and have this safe space that we can come up with. If that's not what you want to do, how do you say no to your friends in the future, or what's going on for you? And you have those open conversations because of this experience.
Yeah.
And when we can see these moments as opportunities for growth rather than to punish,
right,
we continue to evolve. But not only do we evolve, our kids evolve.
Yeah. That's why, this conversation, me and you talking, is why I wanted to do this podcast. I think every podcast, I might say that, but it's like the thing that parents need so much is what you just said. It's not about punishment. It's about, and discipline isn't about spanking, discipline is about lessons, teaching. And if you can think about, it honestly drives me nuts when people are like, well, I got spanked as a kid and I became a great adult, and look at all these kids that aren't getting spanked and are not turning into great adults. And it's like, and that's the only factor, really? Like, it's black and white?
Or look at all the areas of your life. Often we will say, like, I was spanked and I was fine, but I struggled to stay in relationships. Or I was spanked and I was fine, but I've had 10 jobs in 10 years. Like, we often don't see the correlations in those things because of course we're going to defend our childhood, because if we don't, then where does it leave us? Right. And where does that leave us in the relationship with our parents? And we may not want to look back at those things. And that's the beauty with coaching. It's not really, it's understanding the past, but it's different from therapy in that therapy is great. You need to look back and understand and heal from it. Absolutely. And coaching is, okay, we know you don't want to spank. So what new strategies do we have? How do we engage differently?
Yeah.
And show up, in a way that feels good, because 10-1, if you were to really investigate, like if you are a spanker and you really investigate, does that feel good to you? Or are you doing it because it's what you know, and it's what was modeled to you, and it's what you think you need to do your job as a parent? Right.
And there's so many other tools. I talk about no drama discipline all the time, and it's which is a book. And it's just not black and white. It's not. And there's factors, there's lessons that we learn that, I'm sure that at one point, I wrote a letter to my dad saying, I miss you. You spend too much time at your job. I want you to come home. I don't like that we changed to this new church. And it didn't fix anything. It didn't change anything. We never had a conversation about it. And so I learned that if I use my voice, that it doesn't matter, that nothing good happens. And guess what? I didn't use my voice in relationships for a long time. Yeah. And now I can say to my boyfriend, I don't agree. Yes, my triggered reaction was, okay, let's do it your way. But I was very aware that I was not okay with this decision. And I came back to him and I said, I don't think that we should. And there was some pushback, some more. And he said, well, he could have found an adult. And I said, you know what? I just found out he did. He asked the lifeguard, and the lifeguard did nothing. And so he used every tool in his tool belt. And now, you know, we need some new tools. And like you said, a tool he's comfortable with is, Mom, can you come too? Absolutely. I wanted to come on Tuesday, but I also needed a break. So it was like, well,
Yeah.
And it's not like, okay, well, since I needed a break, something bad happened and now I can't take breaks anymore. We're just going to find different times to have a break, you know, or we're going to use different strategies where I'm not feeling overwhelmed and feeling behind. And so, you know, these are things that I'm working on, like also, because, you know, that I didn't know how much work a podcast was. 100%. I thought the biggest work was the editing, and someone's doing that for me.
Yeah.
That's not the biggest part. Like, this is the fun part, and I love this part. And then there's another part of the show notes and the bios and the graphics and the promoting and like,
Yeah. And it's a learning curve. And then it becomes, okay, can I sit at the water park and have a book or relax? And can that be some downtime? Because likely you're not going to have to be on parenting because he's going to be off playing, but you're there as a base to come back to should he need it. And so, and this is where like parenting happens, you know, 90%, 95% of the time outside of active parenting moments. It's how do I meet my needs and create this both and more? Can I relax at the water park and be there for my son versus, oh, like you said, I guess I can't have relaxation time because I need to be there for him, you know? And it's when we're willing to question and look within and have this awareness that we can say, okay, how are both things possible? And this is where we create this, like I say, this foundation of bliss. And as I mentioned, I'll mention quickly, it really is about creating balance. And what I say are 4 pillars of self-awareness. And that is self-love, which is what are my needs and am I meeting them? So it's self-care, but done in a way that it's not the luxurious things. It's how do I honor my well-being so that I have the capacity to show up from a place of calm, because patience should never be the goal in parenting because you're never going to have enough. Patience is let me push down my feelings enough to appear patient on the outside. So when I'm doing the things, I'm actually patient from the inside out, but it's also what is the voice in my head. So self-love is both self-care and how am I talking to myself? Am I constantly beating myself up? And it's changing that. The second pillar is self-regulation, which is taking responsibility for my emotional state and no longer taking responsibility for others. So your boyfriend could have been irritated or upset that you were choosing not to have a punishment, and you don't have to take responsibility for that anger. Right. But that only happens when you learn to regulate yourself. Then the third one is self-discovery, which is learning to question our stories and our beliefs, which is, you know what? I'm doing this because I'm used to always deferring to, you know, my voice doesn't matter. And so I get to question that. I get to question, does this feel good to me? And ask those questions. And then the fourth one is self-worth. And that's really about boundaries. Am I setting boundaries, internal boundaries, so that I'm supporting my well-being and my emotional regulation, external boundaries, which is how I'm engaging my relationships. And then there's the boundaries in parenting, which is, am I creating the structure to keep my child safe, to support his, you know, growth and development. And then when we put those together and we create balance, and that's unique for all of us. Like, I can't tell you what you need to put in your self-care bank. I can't tell you what tool is going to work best for self-regulation. I can't, but we create this balance. And what that is, I imagine it like a molecule. And on the outside are these 4 like rotating, you know, pillars. And then what that gives us access to is what I call our quantum self, which is our sovereign. Like, I'm living by my rules. I'm making my own rules. It's my empowered self. I have a voice. I can speak up for myself. I am safe to do so. It's my L is love. I'm connected to love. I'm connected to that being a choice in my life. And then F is focused within. I'm always looking within. And the behaviors of my quantum self are embodying the vision of who I want to be. It is taking radical responsibility. It is taking aligned action, and it's creating this energetic attraction for what I want. And when I learn how to engage with this molecule, if you will say, this model, this framework, then I create this foundation of bliss. Bliss is just a more fun way to say like happy. or joy or well-being. Yeah. And it's not that I'm in it all the time. It's not that I always am in this state of bliss. It's that I have this foundation and my capacity to return to it when I'm triggered, my capacity to return to it when life feels chaotic, my capacity to return to it when I'm feeling overwhelmed is so much greater, the stronger the foundation is.
Yeah. Everything, all of it. Yes. So this whole podcast episode is advice to moms. But is there one piece that you want to either summarize or something additional that you want to add? One piece.
You can have this amazing experience of life, even in the beautiful yet often challenging role of being a mom. You don't have to lose yourself in that role. You can absolutely find your bliss.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. So we talked, I don't remember if I gave you a forewarning about a book recommendation, but was there a book that you can think of that was really impactful for you?
Oh my gosh.
I know there's a million.
Oh, yeah, there's a million. I think one of the ones that was just most impactful for speaking to the whole thing that we've been talking about today is Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
Okay.
That we get to kind of untame ourselves into the story and structure that we've been told. If you're looking at specific things around like your inner child, the holistic psychologist Nicole LePera just came out with a book, How to Do the Work. No Drama Discipline is an amazing one for supporting you in your parenting. But for the conversation we've had today, I would say Untamed.
Yeah. Awesome. Amazing. I am so grateful for you being here today. I appreciate you pouring into our moms. I hope that they just took copious amounts of notes and re-listen to it over and over again. Like I have a feeling I'm going to. Just so many good nuggets in there that are really important for parenting, for raising, happy, healthy, well-balanced, well-adjusted children. And yeah, all that to say thank you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for having these conversations.
Absolutely. I could do these conversations all day, every day, 24/7. This is my addiction, and and not addiction to addition, but just addiction into retreating into myself and really discovering who I am. And so that I can give the world the best version of myself and not the perfect version of Alicia that you want me to be, which is who I used to be. So
beautiful.
So I want to let the listeners know we'll be back next week with another episode of Imperfect Mommying, and like and subscribe and comment and share, especially share, because this was a super powerful episode. And until we meet again, keep on healing. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Mommying. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AliciaLyons.com. That's ALYSIALYONS.com. See you next time.